This power trio brings us a refreshing take on post-punk, adding a power-packed rock edge to their sound. It has a nostalgic feel that is easily overlooked given the infectious level at which their songs hit. The best example is The Fever, which reminds us as much of Nirvana as it does of The Offspring doing Pixies covers at the start of their career. Passionate and captivating, we want to hear more.
It's so interesting to have a band from the new wave of British heavy metal release their debut album just now. Their first incarnation lived between 1979 and 1982, releasing a demo and a single during that period. The band broke up when bassist Pete Gordelier joined Angel Witch and singer Chris Gordelier replaced Bruce Dickinson in Iron Maiden. They returned in 2019 with 3 original members, and now they're back with this debut album. Appreciating the richness of this movement and the way it brought together such disparate bands is something that jumps out at you with this Chapter 2, where we have a very melodic hard and heavy proposal reminiscent of a cross between Savatage and Deep Purple with even more progressive tinges than those two bands. In fact, progressive heavy metal is a label that would fit perfectly here. 40 years later, their debut album shows that there's a lot of good this band has to offer.
We love a good comeback and the stories of perseverance that usually surround it. In this case, we have the Italians Heimdall, who emerged in the midst of the Italian power metal boom at the end of the 90s. After 4 good albums, the band ceased activities in 2007 and then returned to albums in 2013, 9 years after their 4th work. 10 years on, and here they are back with their 6th album, which promises to be the strongest of their entire career. Production on point, memorable and anthemic songs that draw on the most epic elements of heavy metal and bring a solid and strong collection of songs without ever going overboard. 10 years later, Heimdall returned with a great heavy/power metal album.
As we've said many times before, we love it when bands approach us to show us their music, and we're completely fascinated. And if it weren't for that approach, we can never know, never be richer for the knowledge of their music. That's what happened with this La Mémoire des Ogives by the Belgian Ogives. A band with 9 members, and they don't wear masks, who have a passionate sound that we can fit somewhere between progressive rock, jazz, and classical music, because of the way they compose using techniques such as polyphony, tintinnabuli, and polytonality. It sounds like a big mix, but everything together makes perfect sense, and the emotions and climaxes are familiar to us, even fitting in with what normally happens in post-rock. Far from being a record to consume and throw away, this debut album mixed by Steve Albini is ambitious and makes good use of its ambition.
The premise in the press release for this Street Fighter project is one that we've come across in lots of other proposals. Imagine a time machine and bring 1986 into the present to record an album with the technical conditions that exist now. It's also a good way of summing up what we can hear. This is a project carried out by Marco Angiani, the producer and multi-instrumentalist responsible for much of what we can hear here, with the collaboration of Anders Peterbun on bass, Klaus Agerbo on drums, and Sophia Schmidt and Stefan Jensen on vocals. It also features an endless series of distinguished guests. In the end, it's an album that may not be remembered for its nostalgic flavor, but that doesn't detract from its quality and listening pleasure for those who like time travel.
It's the 7th album from a band that has accustomed us to the best progressive rock, and they're back with a particularly ambitious work. Most of the songs are inspired by different books that all end up fitting into the challenging art rock spirit that the band has become accustomed to. Their progressive sensibility is more refined than ever, although the production can sometimes act as a brake on their ability to soar. This is for first-timers, but for fans of Hats Off Gentlemen it's adequate. It's a work in which they manage to expand their sound like never before. There's more weight, although the distortion isn't very strong. There's jazz fusion experimentation, that ambient feel, and the sense of pure rock and roll. Regardless of their limitations, the British band led by Malcolm Galloway and Mark Gatland continue to show how to make classy progressive rock.
I have to say that I'm a bit critical of modern progressive music, which often doesn't even have much to do with progressive music. And even going with that prejudice for this new Voyager album. Of course, the curiosity of having taken part in the Eurovision Song Contest is always an attraction, although it can also serve as another reason not to bother. Fearless in Love nevertheless manages to surprise us in every way. Not that it isn't a modern proposal for a younger audience, not that it isn't absurdly pop and catchy as well as potentially disposable. However, there's no denying how easily it takes you in, how great the vocal melodies are as well as the voice, and how the songs will appeal to fans of Leprous as well as Devin Townsend. The surprise is all the greater because it manages to break down our preconceptions and because it's an album that we can see ourselves spontaneously turning to many more times in the future.
The return of the Brazilian blues rock master and his band, Mario Rossi, is back with a new album after having made an excellent impression with his previous record, Heavy. Smokeburst goes even deeper into his devotion to the blues and manages to enchant us for almost 40 minutes. Although the guitarist gives his band its name, there is no unbridled devotion to guitar solos here. It's always there, but in a subtle and classy way that reminds us why we love the blues so much. According to him, this is his most complete album, representing both his influences and what he likes to listen to, and that's something he feels good about. Huge album, totally recommended for blues lovers.